Hello and welcome to the Friday Nightmares podcast. Recording actually not in his basement this time, but upstairs is your host, Scott.
And recording from luscious, beautiful Hamilton, Ontario, Canada is Heather Powell. I guess recording from my, dining room, I guess you could say. None of my house is really horror related. I have a little horror corner in the corner of my basement, but for me to record by that, I would basically have to cuddle up to my bookcase, which I don't really have any interest in doing anytime soon. So yeah, here we are again, week 4 of COVID.
Yeah, and people have probably already noticed that we've been a bit bored, so we've been releasing a lot of extra episodes lately.
Yeah, well, I think we've been doing a lot of podcasting in general. I think everyone has. I think this is a time when most podcasters are, it gives you an opportunity to get caught up on films that maybe you haven't had a chance to watch before. I don't know, stuff like that. I kind of feel like I'm becoming accustomed to the current circumstance that we're in. I refuse to say the new reality. I will not say it because I don't think that we live in the Matrix and it's always going to be like this.
No.
But I do, I think you're just becoming more accustomed. Like I went to the liquor store yesterday. I feel like every podcast I talk about how I drink, but yeah, be who you are.
Right, exactly.
But I was in line, and it was a big deal because today is Good Friday here in Canada, and everything shuts down on Good Friday. It's considered a statutory holiday, so really gas stations, convenience stores, food places are the only things that are open, and right now they're just doing takeout and delivery. So there was a big long line yesterday, and it felt like Armageddon. Like we're all lined up beside the liquor store,
Right, all with their was it social distancing going on as well?
Yeah. Oh yeah, people were really good about that. Canadians are though. Like it's, I find Canadians are over the top with following the rules sometimes. Of course, I'm speaking generally. I'm sure there's people out there who would say that's not the case. But yeah, it was fine. I just have a hard time following the arrows in the liquor store. Like the arrows tell you to walk a certain way, and I get confused, and I always cut around. So yeah.
Yeah, we started getting one ways set up in our Kroger and our Myers and stuff like that. They have little things that are saying this aisle only go this way, and so that way there's not people crossing each other, and it's trying to just a way to kind of keep that social distancing a little bit better.
Yeah, I don't follow it though. I'm so bad. I have fucking no idea what I'm doing. Half the time, I just wander around hoping for the best.
Right.
And the story of my life. If there was a real zombie apocalypse, I'd probably be dead. I'd be one of the first people. If it was Dawn of the Dead, the remake,
Yeah.
and the chick comes home, or she's home. Yeah, she comes home from being a nurse, and then that little girl comes into the room, and her husband gets bit.
Yep.
Spoiler alert for anyone. Well, it happens in the first 2 minutes of the movie, but anyway, that would be me. I'd be the husband. I would totally one of the first people turned, and then I turn all the other motherfuckers into zombies. So it's just how it is. So I'm doing my best. I am, but I'm not so good at following the rules.
Right. And yeah, I'm pretty much there with you though with the whole just getting accustomed to this style right now of just living. I pretty much go to work, I come home, and maybe we'll hit up one of the essential stores, like a grocery store or something like that when I need something. And then come home and just watch movies and go on long walks. I don't go anywhere else, don't meet with anybody. And pretty much I just live with my roommate. And it's kind of sad because my roommate reached over one day and just tapped me on the shoulder and he goes, human interaction. That felt nice. So it's getting pretty sad that especially people like me who's a hugger, can't really do any of that.
Do you want to show me on the doll where he touched you, Scott? Is there something that you're trying to communicate through this conversation? I'm just kidding.
Oh, I mean.
Hey, isolation does lots of things, huh?
It does. It makes you very lonely.
I'm just kidding, but it's true though. We've been really restricted of what kind of interaction, and because you guys live in the same house and stuff, obviously you can be more interactive with each other. So that's good. But for a lot of people, imagine living by yourself right now. I feel for people insane. That are living by themselves right now. That must be very difficult.
Yeah, because I would probably go absolutely insane. And
or you just podcast all the time, all day, all night.
I was gonna say kind of like what we're doing now,
just now.
Yeah, I was like, what did we do? 4 or 5 podcasts in a row, last week into this week, and then gonna be recording like a couple more days in a row here, and
Yeah, good times, good times. And we're on episode 5.
yep, 5 of our main
Episode
show, and we have 2 bonus episodes.
So look at us go, episode 5. So I guess we should jump back into the movies we've been watching. I really want to take the first one, if you don't mind.
Oh, absolutely.
So we watched The Turning.
Boy,
what,
did we.
What a disappointment. Not a good film. You know, I think it was filmed very well. It was very beautiful. And it was great, but like it was like a cheaply made haunted house. Like,
it so was.
All the scares in this movie were just like, it was like, I remember I listened to Fresh Cuts, right? And I'm an avid fan of Fresh Cuts, and they went over The Turning, and they were like, yeah, there's a lot of jump scares. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's a ghost story. That makes sense. But like, literally, like every 2 seconds was a jump scare. And it got to the point, they were ridiculous jump scares.
Oh, they so were. And like, none of them were well earned.
No, and there was one, and this is a spoiler in case anyone hasn't seen the movie. There's a mannequin that its head turns. Like, it's so ridiculous. Like, it's not even like how it was done in The Boy that was like creepy and kind of built up to it. Like, there was no build up to this, and then you never saw the mannequin again.
Yeah, it was almost like no point to it.
There's no point, and it was I know Venom and Mike liked the main character, the main female in it. I did not enjoy her. I found her, and it's nothing against the actress. I'm sure she was just doing her job of playing the character. But right. I found the character quite annoying. The kids were the only saving grace for me.
Yeah, especially Finn Wolfhard. That
like
guy he did such a good job.
And it's funny because when I listened to Mike and Venom, I was like, oh yeah, this kid sounds like he's a super big brat. But like throughout the movie, I'm like, man, I feel this kid. Like, this woman's like, she's weird. Like, this nanny is weird. And like, I would be also thrown off by her too. But some like when you're sitting there, and I jump a lot through movies. You know, I definitely am somebody who the jump scare was created for. And watching this film with some of these jump scares, like, it literally looked like a rinky-dink haunted house that you would walk through. And like someone would like dress up and be like, "Wooga booga booga," and you'd be like, "Ah!" And then like, walking through. Like, that's what this movie reminded me of. It was just, and it was so boring, and it was so hard to get to the end of it, and the ending made no sense. Like, I got that they were going for this artistic ending, and you know, you figure out what's real and what's not real, and I don't know. I called it back in January when I said there's going to be a twist.
Yep, you sure did. I think it was on our very first episode.
Yeah. And anyway, I'm done. I'll let you talk about The Turning. It just disappointed me so much. Like, I didn't have super high expectations, but man, was it like, I don't know, between that and The Grudge with ghost movies this year, like, it's just been so dreadful. Like, I don't know. I hope something else comes out this year. If that Fear Street movie ever comes out, I don't know. I don't know if any movies will come out this year, but if they do, I hope
at least any into the big theaters. I mean, we'll still get the VOD stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm pretty much right there with you with this. Like, I went in having just like, okay, this will probably just be an okay film. Like, I didn't expect it to be amazing or bad. And yeah, it seemed to drag on. Not much really happened. And the scares were not effective. Like, I don't think I jumped once in this film. And like you, like, I don't startle easily, but there are like some jump scares get me.
Now, when I startle easily over loud noises.
Yeah.
Like, and for me to not jump once is a very, very bad sign.
Right, exactly.
That was trying to be full of jump scares didn't work.
But yeah, this was just like, I wasn't disappointed because, like I said, I didn't really expect much anyways, but at the same time, I was just like, yeah, it's a movie. I mean, it's there.
You know, and what I would suggest watching instead, and I know we're going a little bit out of order from what we were planning, but that's just how we roll, is Haunters, The Art of the Scare. I would recommend watching that documentary on Shudder from 2015. Oh, sorry, 2017 is what we have on here. And as opposed to The Turning.
Well, I'll say, because The Turning pretty much made you want to like watch that because you're like, well, this is a haunted house movie, or this is like a haunted house, so.
And I love haunted houses. I've been to a couple in Ontario. We have a couple of big ones. So I've been to Fear Farm, which is out in Kitchener, Ontario, and they have about 4 different main mazes. So one is a circus clown thing. Another one is through fields. Another one is a hayride. Another one is through this like pretty creepy house. Like I was walking through this horror house, and my girlfriend was behind me, and I guess this guy with a chainsaw came behind her, but was quiet, silent. And then like she moved so he could come up behind me, and I turned around to say something to her, and there was this dude like with a chainsaw in my face. So of course it
Nice.
like startled me, but like because I jumped so much, I think these actors think, oh, she's gonna be scared, right? But
Right.
like I know they're in a costume. Like I know that they're not actually gonna chainsaw me. So I react and I'm like, ah, and then I'm like, ah, that's a good one. And then they try to follow me to creep me out. And they just end up following me through the haunted house, and I don't react, and they eventually give up and they go somewhere else because they're like, oh well. But and then last year I went to one out in Niagara Falls, and that was very good as well. Also multiple mazes, one of the best hayride mazes I have ever been on. I will have to actually just look up the name. It escaped me right now, but I'm going to look it up. Which ones have you been to, Scott, while I Google this and try to figure out the name of the one in Niagara
Um.
Falls?
Okay. So yeah, the one that I went to was in Flint, and it was called Exit 13,
Oh.
and it was just pretty much a walk through a haunted house, be done. It was there was no extra stuff to it. It was just like one haunt, and yeah, that one had some pretty cool moments. One of the things for me is like I don't scare easily like that. So like
Mm.
when I'm walking into those rooms, I'm one of those type that they probably hate. That's just kind of like, oh, look at all this cool stuff, and I'm looking at all the details of everything that's been put
Oh
together.
my God, that is so something you would do.
And then I'd like look over and see like one of the characters hiding in the darkness. I'd be like, I just look over and wave at him, and then just keep walking. And
That's
I
awesome.
but no, there was like certain there was one room in there that really disoriented me, where I was like, it's like you're walking across this like metal bridge, and there's like these spinning like colors going all around it.
Oh yeah, like a tunnel.
Yeah.
Yes, I've seen
And
that before.
oh, it really disoriented me to the point where I felt like I was off balance and about to fall over, because like just trying to walk through it just really threw me off, and I thought that was really effective.
We've seen that in some of the haunted houses movies that have come out. So
Yeah.
Haunt and stuff like that does a really good job of reflecting these set up haunted houses that occur. The one in Niagara that so I went to the Fear Farm, which is very good. I would really recommend Fear Farm. They actually go out and compete with their special effects.
Oh,
They have a
nice.
dragon and stuff that they have on display that breathes fire and stuff. Like it's pretty good. And when you're on the hayride, a horseless headman will ride up beside you. Like it's pretty good stuff. But the
Or
haunted
Headless Horseman.
headless horseman, thank you. Yeah, just disregard my words. I just slur things together all the time. It's drinking 4 o'clock on a Friday. But the haunted manor hayrides and haunted houses is in Niagara Falls. So for all my brothers and sisters that live in the state of New York, once borders open again, hopefully, I don't know, maybe this October, I would really recommend it. So they have seven separate haunted house themes, and they had everything from Slender Man to Jason Voorhees to Michael Myers to Freddy Krueger, and it
Wow.
was all really, really well done. We were going through this one haunted house, and I was with a group of people that probably like Halloween but aren't as like into horror movies. So I was like super excited. Like I would see Slender Man and like freak out that Slender Man was there, and I had a selfie with Jason that I posted, and a selfie with
Oh, yep.
Chucky as well. And this chick gets right up in my face in the haunted house, one of the characters, and she's like, "I'm gonna fucking slit your throat," right? And I obviously, like, I know she's not really gonna slit my throat, right?
Right.
Haunted house, but it was good. Like, she was legit, man. Like, it was like she was right into character and stuff. And I think she was a little bit more intense with me because I wasn't reacting, right? So if you don't
Right.
react and you don't look scared, then their goal is to try to scare you, right?
Right.
But the hayride that I went on was probably the best haunted hayride I've ever been on. It's so good that you can pay just to do the hayride,
Oh,
or
wow.
you can pay for a package. I think it's about $60 or $70 per person for everything. If you do
Well, that's
all
not
the
bad.
haunted houses and stuff, yeah. But if you just want the hayride, I think it's like $25, and it is incredible. Like I will I could go on that over and over and over and over again. The acting, and you go through Camp Crystal Lake, so that's at this like camp resort that they turn into a haunted area during the day or during Halloween, and it is just incredible. Like at one point Jason jumps onto the wagon out of nowhere,
Oh wow.
and like everyone's freaking out, and I'm like, Jason, woo! Right? Like cheering him on, right? Like I'm pretty sure I looked like a psychopath on the hay ride. But so that's like, I love that stuff. So, watching The Haunters was right up my alley. And after watching The Turning and me thinking about shitty haunted houses that I had been in, I wanted to learn more about the haunters industry. And what an interesting documentary. I know you watched it as well.
Yeah, that was really fascinating.
And like, just there's a couple people that run it outside of their house, like outside of their garage and stuff like that. And one dude has a very, very extreme, like torturing theme.
Yeah, McCamey Manor.
And you've heard of it before.
Yeah, I don't know how I heard about it, but like I think I might have stumbled across it on Facebook, and there was like a YouTube video of it saying like the most disturbing haunted house you'll ever go into, and it was like a 5-minute thing of watching people just getting tortured and waterboarded and just this vile stuff. And I'm going, okay, that is way too extreme. Like I could not do that. Like, what was he saying? Like he would tell his actors that if someone pukes, shove the puke back in their mouth to make them puke again and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, that is horrible.
Yeah, it was really interesting. And of course, this documentary is probably to a portion is edited and cut. Like we edit and cut our episodes so we sound really good. Same with these documentaries, right? They're going to edit and cut it so there's some drama to it or whatever. But it was just really interesting. A lot of the people that were in the documentary had partners that either weren't into Halloween or horror at all, or almost despised it and felt like it was like a mistress or another entity in their marriage. And I thought that was really interesting, because if that's something that you're that passionate about, to have a partner that's not even on board, like that's something that you like to do, that must be really challenging.
Yeah, that would be very, very difficult. Like especially, was it like the 3 or 4 months leading up to Halloween when they're getting everything ready, and like they just know that they're not going to see each other very often, and the one's not going to be very supportive of it. And it's fascinating because I did not understand that or realize that was like a issue that some of these people that do their own haunts have to deal with.
Well, and it's interesting because liking horror movies already, to the amount that you and I do and some other people in our community do, or other people listening to this podcast do, it's not guaranteed that you're going to meet somebody who likes it to the same level you do. Like there are definitely people out there that have obtained that. Right. And they meet people. It's like anyone, like people that are into cars or motorcycle riding or whatever, right? You always are going to have people that maybe are really interested in something and people that aren't. And you kind of have to walk this fine balance. But it was just very interesting, this one couple. And I really do think it was edited to reflect this. The wife was very unsupportive. Yeah. Very, very unsupportive. And I don't know how much of that was edited to make it look that way or how much was she really that unsupportive, because there's a part where she almost threatens to end their marriage over, and that seemed a little sensationalized to me. But yeah, it was just very interesting, the work and the time and the energy and the industry and trying to up the ante every year, and these gore houses that we're looking at. Anyway, instead of watching The Turning, watch this on Shudder. Yeah. It's better.
Yep. Yeah, because I think that used to be on Netflix, and I think it kind of rotated out of Netflix's queue, and then Shudder ended up grabbing it and putting it on there. But yeah, it is a very fascinating documentary, and man, some of those haunted houses I'm looking at going, well, I will not do that because that's too extreme. But then there's others where, what was the one they were talking about where it was an interactive haunted house where it had a storyline and everything? I'm like, okay, that's pretty freaking cool.
Like, I'm not okay with someone pretending to torture me. Like, no. I'm not okay with that. Like, I don't want to be locked in a freezer or put in a coffin or be pushed underwater and stuff like that. To me, that's not entertainment. And I understand for some people that are, and hey, you know what? Rock on, man. If that's what you want to do, awesome.
Yeah.
All the power to you. It's just not something that I feel comfortable with. Right?
No, absolutely not. Like, I could not handle that. Like, I probably would have a heart attack if they did that for too long to me.
Oh, you would have an anxiety attack.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? I think I would too. I think a lot of people would. And even the people that consented to go through it, and then afterwards they were sharing about how much stress it caused them, how scared they were.
Yeah, some people were like scarred.
Yeah. Right.
Like,
and it's interesting, right? Why you do that to yourself. But I guess it's the same reason you go on roller coasters or bungee jump or whatever, right?
Yep, the thrill of the rush.
Yeah, exactly.
But yep, I highly recommend that documentary. It was really, really good. But yeah, I guess I can jump into one of our other 2020 watches that you and I decided to check out last week. Hunter's Moon. This one stars Thomas Jane, which I didn't even recognize him at first, but he ends up being the sheriff. And wow, his acting was rough in this movie. But this movie is pretty much about a family that moves to a new house, and there tends to be like a serial killer and something else going on in the town. But then there's also happens to be werewolf attacks. And I'm like, okay, this could be pretty cool because, you know, if it's done right, this is going to be a cool werewolf movie. Well, it wasn't done right.
You know, and it's interesting. This movie toted the line of it could be like a well done softcore porn at times. Like I felt like that's where it was going.
Well, I mean, you and I pretty much made up a whole new porn like while watching it, like with that storyline and everything.
It was so bad, and the acting was definitely challenging. There were some people that you can tell probably had more acting chops than others.
Yeah.
But the writing was not good.
No.
I will say that they tried to move the plot along. The pacing was fine.
Yep, the pacing was good. The story was very predictable.
Yeah, it was easy to call out the story, and the special effects made sense for the budget that they had.
Yeah, I actually will say the werewolf that they show actually looked pretty dang good.
Yeah, like that, you know, they used their budget well. You know, it's not worth we didn't have to pay for it, but I would definitely not recommend dropping $6.99 on it. I don't think that you're going to walk away from that and go, wow, what a good use of $6.99.
Unless you're like a huge werewolf fan, then maybe. But even then, I'm like this. If you're a huge werewolf fan, you've seen a lot of better films, I'm sure.
Or you really like cute little blonde things, then I think you'll enjoy
that too.
There's some very good-looking young ladies and a couple good-looking young men in this movie. So if you enjoy looking at some really beautiful people, I think you may enjoy it as well. I don't even think it's that good of a werewolf movie, to be honest with you. Like, no. I don't even think I think if you liked werewolf movies and you watch this, you'd be like, is this like a porn parody werewolf movie? Like, it's just not that great of a film. I think it's a good film. Yet again, if you're a novice filmmaker and you want to see what you could be working with, actors wise, script wise, special effects wise, yet again, it's probably worth the watch. But I personally don't think it's even a good werewolf movie.
No, it's definitely on the lower rung for me of like werewolf films. Like, I mean, it just wasn't that interesting. Like, it didn't hold my attention, even when it was paced well. It just did not hold my attention.
I hear you. So the next one that was good was Underwater.
Yes, this
what
one.
A fabulous movie.
Yeah, this one had me on the edge of my seat, like almost the whole entire time, and I could feel my anxiety rising because like I'm just picturing myself in that situation, and dear God.
Yeah, it's good. You know, I'm sad I missed it in the theaters and I just watched it at home. I think this is something that would definitely been a very good theater watch.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think it's going to fall in my own personal top 10 this year, but it's definitely, I definitely enjoyed it. It wasn't slow. It moved quickly. I'm not a huge fan of Kristen Stewart. I think Kristen Stewart? Kristen Stewart. She's okay. No, she's okay. Like, yeah. She's not, I got through half of the Twilight films before I couldn't take them anymore.
More than I did.
More than you didn't even watch them?
No, I think I caught like 10 minutes of one from someone at someone's house, and I was like, I'm a good.
I just remember the first one with her and her and Robert Patterson. It was so their love story was just vomit worthy.
Oh,
But
so it was.
anyway, but she's much better here. She plays basically herself, which is like no expression throughout the entire thing.
Right.
But the other actors are good. Like there's a good comedic relief in there too.
Yeah, I think that was T.J. Miller.
Yeah, T.J. Miller, he's good. Uh, the rest of them are decent. You know, like it's a fast moving plot. It's beautifully filmed. It's really cool how they did the CGI that's in it.
Yeah.
Definitely they used the money wisely, and it shows. It's out of all the movies we've talked about so far, it's the only one I would recommend giving a watch to and paying for. Like I think it's worth it.
Yeah, and this was like right up my alley because this had Lovecraft written all over it, and you know my love of Lovecraft, and yeah, these creatures were very reminiscent of that. And then like the last 10 minutes, like there's something that a Lovecraft fan would just go apeshit over. I'm not even gonna say what it is, but yeah, it was freaking cool.
Yeah, it was cool. And I'm not a big Lovecraft fan at all, but I enjoyed what you're referring to. Like it's a good movie. Give it a watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think it's like in my top 10 right now, but it may eventually get pushed out because the year is still young.
And that doesn't mean it's not a good movie, right?
No.
Like just because it, already there's 34 2020 movies that we watch. So like, that's pretty hard to have a top 10. So if you're like sitting at number 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, that doesn't mean it's a bad film.
Oh no.
It's
just means we've seen a lot.
Yeah, right. That's all that would mean. So I agree. I think this movie's very well done.
Another one that was fairly well done. This was an indie film, The Dare.
Yeah.
Yeah, we watched this one together. Like all these ones that we're talking about so far, we've watched together through Skype or whatever. But yeah, The Dare was kind of reminded me of an old, like almost like a nod to Saw films in a way. Lots of violence, a lot of torturing of people, but it's pretty much about a story of this guy wakes up, or this guy gets knocked out at his house and wakes up and he's chained to a wall with a couple other people, and there's this masked killer that's just pretty much watching them and comes down and torments them probably once every day or something like that.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. You don't really get an idea of how long they've been captured for.
Yeah.
But it seems like they're getting tortured on the regular.
Yeah, right. And yeah, and then the story will unfolds, and it ties a lot of things together, and you're going, oh, this makes a lot more sense now too. And Richard Brake is in it. He plays the father of this kid. And man, the scenes with him and that child are just uncomfortable.
Wasn't he also in Come to Daddy?
Richard Brake? No.
That wasn't Richard Brake?
No, I don't remember who that was. Richard Brake was in 3 from Hell. He was in 31 as Doomhead, the main killer clown in 31. He was also the Night King in Game of Thrones for 1 season, I believe.
Yes, you're right. That was Stephen McHattie that I'm thinking of. That was in Come to Daddy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Which also, great movie.
Yes, absolutely. Good movie as well.
But I highly recommend renting this one. I think it was on Amazon Prime to rent or whatever for like $3.99.
And you can find it Google Play in Canada.
Yep. Yeah, because I haven't used Google Play yet. I haven't had a need to at the moment, but I'm sure that'll come at some point.
Yeah, right. Well, if you can't find it on Prime, maybe. But Google Play is where I tend to find a lot of stuff because our Prime isn't the same.
Right.
But yeah, I've been able to find The Dare and another movie that we're going to talk about on Google Play.
Yeah, and speaking of that movie, you want to go ahead and talk about it?
Yeah, the one that I thought was really cool, and I brought it up on, oh my God, we've been on so many podcasts, No More Room in Hell, is A Perfect Host. And A Perfect Host really plays off the whole Airbnb craze right now.
Yeah.
So I have stayed at an Airbnb before. I actually found a really enjoyable experience. The Airbnb was beautiful. It wasn't creepy. We stayed with a group of people, so it was, I think there was 4 of us that stayed in the Airbnb, so it was, I guess, kind of similar to this movie actually. But yeah, we never saw the host or anything like that. And in this film, it's definitely an Airbnb trip gone wrong. Very, very much low budget, but wow, like if this was a film that a bunch of film students had to do in college, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
Don't pick something that's over the top complicated to do, that's going to require a lot of special effects. Take something that involves character development, something that's applicable for the average audience to understand. And I think that's why when Hostel came out, in Hostel 2, it came out at a time where, like, the backpacking craze, right? Where everyone and their mom and their cousin and their friend wanted to go backpacking across Europe, Australia. Like, I don't know, people still do this. And to me, it blows my mind. Like, what
Yeah.
sounds like the most unfun thing in the world is to go to a hostel and sleep on a bed with like a bunch of other people around you. That sounds like torture. I work with a young lady who, I say young lady because I'm like, super old at 30. I'm going to be 37 next week. But anyway, she's in her 20s, early 20s. So she's a baby. And she thinks it's the coolest thing ever. And like, oh, Heather, you meet so many new people. And I'm like, no, none of this sounds fun. This sounds like a lot of work. Like, if I'm going to go tour Europe, I want to go on a tour that I pay for, that the bus takes me from place to place to place, and I sleep in hotels.
Right.
And if that makes me sound like privileged, well, I'm privileged. So that's how it is. But I thought that was smart. Those were smart movies. They capitalized on how hostels were the big thing at the time and people backpacking. And I just feel like A Perfect Host is doing the same thing with Airbnbs. And capitalizing on what could happen. And I think that's really cool.
Yep. The only complaint I would have about A Perfect Host is that third act where it just went on for too long and the character decisions were very dumb.
Mm-hmm.
That brought it down like a full point for me when I was giving my rating. But like, it's still worth renting because it's definitely a very good, well-made film for its budget and everything, and it has some very awkward, uncomfortable scenes because of that host, and like it's just very bizarre. But yeah, like that third act is the only thing that I would have like had done differently.
And the acting's solid, to be honest with you. I really enjoyed the acting in this movie. I thought it was actually very good. For like, obviously a lot of these people, this is probably one of their first films. Like, I looked them up and I couldn't find them in a lot of other stuff. So, they did pretty good. Like, yet again, I think this is a perfect example of, you pick a concept that's relatable, you pick something that doesn't require too much budget for special effects, and you let the story move quickly. Like, I think this is only an hour and 20 minutes long too. Like, it wasn't a long movie.
No, I think it might even been. I think it might have been like
even shorter than that, like an hour and 10, maybe.
Yeah, I think it was like an hour and 10. Yeah, it was nice, easy, brisk watch.
And that's huge. That makes a huge difference. Actually, I can look it up right now and just see what the timing is. The running time for this movie was 76 minutes.
Yeah, so pretty about an hour. 15.
An hour and 15, 16 minutes. So that's smart. That's smart when it's a low budget film. The ratings on Letterboxd seem to be pretty good for it, and I would definitely, I agree with you. I'd recommend checking it out.
Yep, definitely worth the rental.
Absolutely.
And then I'll bring up one of the older films that I watched that a lot of people have talked about this one, and I finally sat my ass down to watch it, and that is Grave Encounters, which was a Canadian horror film.
Woo!
And I think it was filmed in BC in an asylum.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, it's pretty much it's a found footage movie, and it's basically about these people that are ghost hunters, like doing a ghost hunter style TV show, and their TV show is called Grave Encounters. And they go on, I think this is like their 5th or 6th episode, and they go to this haunted asylum for the episode, and then they never return. So they just find this video footage and show you that. And man, this movie was freaking creepy. Like, it got under my skin. Like, it was. I'm not a huge found footage fan, but man, the way they did the found footage in this really worked.
And what year was it?
It was 2011.
It's funny because we watched one from this year called Camp Cold Brook that kind of tried to do the same thing,
Yeah,
but it doesn't sound like. It sounds like the movie you watched delivered better than what we watched.
yeah. This one I think this one will get under your skin when you watch it because my God, like
Mm.
it's really freaking creepy. The effects in it are really well done, and yeah, the performances are all really good, and it's more violent than I expected it to be too.
Oh,
But
good, good.
yeah, this one high recommend. I ended up I'm trying to remember where I ended up watching this. Oh, it was on Tubi TV.
Tubi, oh good old Tubi.
Yeah, and yeah, I recommend this movie. I can see why a lot of people had talked about it because my God, this one was super effective.
Nice. I'll have to check it out. It sounds like you're singing his praises pretty good. So
Yeah, I gave it a 10 out of 10 when I reviewed it, so like I was blown away.
that's awesome. So I listened to the Exploding Heads top 100 of the decade, and I took that opportunity to write down movies I'd never seen.
Nice.
Got talked about, and one of them was, or two of them was the VHS series.
Oh yeah.
I think the first two. I don't think they talked about the third.
Well, they brought it up, but they said it better not be on this list because yeah, Fire Roll was not very good.
Okay. So I could only find two. I did try to find the first one, and I still haven't been successful in that. And so, just on the theme of found footage, because you brought up found footage, yeah, I really enjoyed it. Shit, it's a good movie, and it's a darker anthology compared to some of and we know how much I liked Nightmare Cinema last year.
Yeah.
And oh man, VHS is way better than Nightmare Cinema. I did enjoy the one story Nightmare Cinema the most, simply because of the own personal touch that it gave for me.
Right.
But man, and it's not found footage, right? Like it's more, performance and acting, and not a found footage movie. But for VHS, man, those found footages, they're creepy.
Yeah, like I think especially in part 2, I think it's every single story is really good.
Yeah.
Like there isn't one story where it's just like, oh, this is okay or just bad. No, they're all really good in that one.
And even the zombie one, it's a little more comical, to be honest with you, than
Oh, it
the
is,
other
but I
ones are.
love
But
that
it's
one.
still creepy, and they still go places where I'm like, oh, they went there.
Yeah.
Okay. Right?
Yeah.
No holds bars, and then the effects of watching VHS. The effects of watching the video on you, I think is shown really well. So I look forward to finding the first one somewhere and watching it.
Yeah. What would you say is your favorite story out of those?
The zombie one.
The zombie one's your favorite?
Yeah, I really thought that was really creative.
Nice. Yeah, I think it's a tie between the zombie one and that cult one.
Yeah, the cult one's pretty cool too.
That one had some really creepy moments to it.
Yeah, very dark.
Yeah.
Very, very dark. And I think I had a hard time with some of the scenes in that one. Just being, for my own comfort level.
Right.
But that doesn't mean it's a bad movie. It just meant that it made me uncomfortable a little bit. And there's certain lines I find in horror that is very difficult for me. When I see it, I can usually sit through it, but sometimes it just doesn't sit with me, and I prefer to go back to something else that I enjoyed a little bit more.
Right.
And the zombie one, I just like the comedy and the yet again, they went places that I didn't think they were going to go, but to me it was more funny.
Yeah, and I really love the way that they use the GoPro as the way
Yeah,
to
that's what I'm talking about. And I love when movies do that. That's what I liked about The Perfect Host is you tie in current technology, current happening events in a way that makes it clever.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah, because that's a good way to do the found footage style for these VHS segments.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and another one that I will bring up, I ended up watching Would You Rather?
Yeah, you were saying really good things about this.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with this one. It's pretty much about the main girl. She is taking care of her brother who, I forget what type of disease he has, but she's basically having to take care of him for the rest of his life. And the medical expenses are piling up, and
I thought he had cancer.
It might have been cancer.
Okay.
But yeah, all the medical expenses were piling up, and yeah, she's just struggling to keep things afloat. And then she gets this offer from a very rich person who is played by Jeffrey Combs, and basically just says, "Hey, come to my party. Uh, we play this game, and the winner of this game gets everything taken care of for the rest of their life. You won't have to worry. Your medical bills will be paid for your brother, this and that." And she gets there, and it's kind of awkward interactions, and then you find out that they're one to Jeffrey Combs' character wants to play Would You Rather, and well, the game of Would You Rather is not very nice, and you have like 15 seconds to decide on would you do this or would you do that, and it's usually like would you do this to this character or would you do this to this character?
Mm.
Decide in 15 seconds, and you can't back out. You have to make a decision. If you back out, well, bad things happen to you.
Oh yeah, that makes sense, right? There has to be some kind of, if you don't do it, you're going to be punished for not doing it, kind of thing. Right?
Yeah. And man, some of the things that they are forced to deal with, like in their decisions, like, oh, it is intense. And like, it's one of those where you question yourself going, what would I do in that situation?
Well, if you're Canadian, you don't have to worry about it because your health care is covered.
Well,
I'm just kidding. Well, not really.
true.
Well, it's true she never would be there because.
True,
though.
Though Ricky from Trailer Park Boys was one of the characters in it.
Oh, was he really? Oh,
Yep.
man. Oh, you sold me. Now I got to go watch that right now. I'm going to stop this podcast and support my brother from the Trailer Park Boys. That's a great series, but you really have to like that sense of humor, dude.
Oh, you do.
To enjoy it, right? Well, I'll definitely check it out. You sold me. It sounds really entertaining. It sounds like though I'm not a big fan of torture stuff, like as we've talked about with Saw. I respect the movies. They're not my go-to.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even say this is like, I mean, obviously he's torturing these people, but it's not like, torture. It's just like you're getting tormented because you're having to make this decision on what you're going to do.
Makes sense. I watched The Girl on the Third Floor, which is a very controversial movie, it seems, in our horror community because people either seem to love it or hate it. I don't like CM Punk. I don't like him as a wrestler. I respect what he's done for the industry, but I have never enjoyed him. I find him egotistic and narcissistic, and which most wrestlers are, I guess you could argue. But for him, it's really over the top for me. He was fine in this movie. Even though I'm not a big fan of him, I think he acted fine in this movie. I think he played his character well. It was okay. I wouldn't say, oh, it was horrible and big piece of crap. I don't say that about movies usually too much anyway.
Right.
But would I watch it a second time? Probably not. It was a decent little ghost story. I think CM Punk does have some potential if he stays in horror. Like he's never going to be a huge mainstay actor. But if I look at other wrestlers that have made the leap, like The Rock in the Fast and Furious films, or John Cena, Hulk Hogan, I would put him either on par or maybe a little bit above their acting ability. Definitely better than Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yeah.
When it comes to acting. So, yeah, like yet again, I can see, like, I don't think it's a masterpiece by any stance, but it wasn't horrible. It was a very basic bitch ghost story.
Okay. Yeah, because I've heard mixed things about it, like you were talking about, and I wasn't even sure if it was considered horror or not, so I just never had bothered.
That's horror. I don't know why someone would not consider it horror.
Okay.
Like I would be very confused if someone said that wasn't a horror movie.
Yeah, maybe that was just something I kind of had in my head, thinking it wasn't horror for some reason.
Yeah, it's definitely horror. I don't think you could put it in any other category. Is it a really well done horror? That might be another. My dog just absolutely yawned at the same time that I did that facial expression, so I find that really funny. Well, no one can see my face right now, but anyway, it's okay. I would say to you, if you got nothing else to throw on one day, like at work, you could probably throw it on and not be distracted.
Right.
That heavy of a movie, like you can follow along pretty good. But yeah, that's it. And I guess I'll just mention one more before we move this away from this. Is I watched Satanic Panic.
Yeah.
And that was also a controversial one from last year, I believe. People had a lot to say about it.
Yeah, I know a lot of people either had it in their top 10s or just absolutely hated it.
Yeah, I can see why people would hate it. I don't know if I would have had it in my top 10. I don't know because it's really not. It's horror comedy.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to be scary. It's supposed to be a play on upper middle class society, and some of the conversations between some of the young ladies in it I thought was pretty funny, some of the stuff they say to each other. And there's some pretty funny like sexual things that are in it as well that I
Oh
thought
yeah.
entertaining. um as I was saying to you before, it was definitely a basic white bitch movie, and I'm a basic white bitch. So this was speaking my language, and I gave it pretty high. I gave it 9.5 out of 10
Yeah,
for enjoyability. Like, I enjoyed it. Would I sit there and say, oh, it's a top movie of 2019? No. But did I enjoy it? Absolutely, I did.
right. Yeah, because I think I gave it about a 7.5. Like, because I also had told you that I went into it not realizing it was going to be a horror comedy. I thought it was going to be more of a serious horror film.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm just like, oh, it's one of these types. This is not what I expected. And I think it kind of let me down that way. But I also think, I got to be in the right mood because, like I was telling you, like, my taste for comedy is very weird. Like, I can like one movie that's very similar with another film, and I can love one of them and hate the other for some reason. I don't know why, but like that's just how it goes. Like, but comedy is also very subjective, and some things you don't find funny, other people just love.
Yeah, I could see that. And I think with this movie in particular, it plays a lot like it. I don't want to say it's a female centric movie, in case there's some dudes listening that are like, oh, but I really dug it. But I do think it plays a lot from female humor
Yeah.
and what females experience, and the whole like, virginity thing, and there's other shit that they talk about in it. And the cameos were great. There were some really good cameos in this movie. But yeah, knowing it's a horror comedy going into it, and it reminded me a lot of the same humor in things like Adventureland in 2009. Like,
Yeah.
and I found that movie really funny, and
Yeah.
I
So did
like
I.
that kind of humor. And this really struck for me with a lot of things that the lady said, and it was fluffy, it was fun. It doesn't take a lot of brain space. The ending was kind of ridiculous, but like that's what you
Mm-hmm.
expect in that movie. Like, you can't walk into that movie and be like, oh man, it's going to be a super deep good ending. Like,
Right.
it was a solid film. And I would say if you like Adventureland and you like Zombieland, and maybe as a female you really like female centric humor that's a little sarcastic and tongue in cheek and stupid stuff like that, you'll probably enjoy this. um if you don't, then you might not, and that's okay.
Yeah. I was saying it's streaming on Shutter now, so it's free to check out if you have the subscription to Shutter.
Yeah, which I think there's a 30-day free thing still going on too, right? Like, you can
Yep.
still do that. So
Yeah, which
um
I'll give a plug here, and I think it's yeah, and the promotional code is shut in.
oh, perfect, shut in. Okay. So, and that's to encourage people to stay home,
Yep.
right? And I lied, there's one more.
Oh,
And
okay.
I'm just going to sum it up so that you can sum up any ones that you have. Is the Tales of Halloween.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's I want to double check the year here. 2015. It's 90 minutes, and man, they fit 10 stories into 90 minutes.
Yeah, and I think there's only like one of those stories I thought was just okay, and the rest I really enjoyed.
Yeah, like, they're quick.
Yeah, and it's like it became one of my movies where I watch it like on a yearly rotation around Halloween now.
And there was just people that were in it that I felt like I recognized from other stuff. Like, obviously Lynn Shay is in it, and Adam Green is in it. Um, John Landis is in it. Barbara Crampton is in it. There's a couple of just like big name people. Joe Dante is in it. So they
Yep,
have like a
Stuart
lot of,
Gordon.
right. They have a lot. Oh, Stuart Gordon's in it as well. Wow. Like, they had a lot of actors and actresses that were, pretty familiar that was in this movie. And it was fun. Like, it was a
Yeah,
fun little film. I would watch it again on other Halloweens. Like, I thought that it moved quickly, and I think if I was getting somebody into horror, I would actually show them this. To
yeah,
be
I could.
honest.
Yeah, I could definitely see that because yeah, there's a lot of just like fun stories. There's some really creepy stories,
Hmm.
and I think one of my favorites is I think it was called the 13th Friday or something, or October 13th or something like that. And it's supposed to be like a ripoff of Jason Voorhees. And
Hmm.
that one just got really ridiculous and silly and violent, and then really kind of cute and disturbing at the end at the same
Oh
time.
yeah, that was really funny. I really liked that one. I
Trick
thought
or
that was
treat.
really, oh my gosh, I thought it was super cute. And I think that that is something, yeah, again, know your kid, but you could show to a kid as an entrance into the horror movie. None of those stories, except for one with kids, um, was
Yeah,
overly graphic or overly scary, in my opinion. Like I, yet again, know your kid,
yeah,
but I think that that wouldn't be a horribly bad entry to get them to start watching horror movies.
yeah. I could definitely see that because yeah,
And they're
that's
short little stories, right? So like if the
yeah,
kid doesn't like one story, it's going to move to another one.
right, exactly. And it goes quickly. The whole movie does.
Oh yeah, like it's a very palatable watch. So yeah, that's it for me for what I've been watching and what I was digging.
Yeah, I got a bunch more, but yeah, I'll save those for later. Like
Is there anything
we've
that you want to add now?
um actually yeah, I guess I will mention one more. The Invitation.
Yeah, you saw that. That's right. I remember you talking about it.
Yeah, I know this is Brandon Orlick's one of his all-time favorite films now. And so I've been wanting to watch it just cuz, I wanted to see what it was like, and yeah, this movie was really good. Like it's a bit of it's a slow burn, and but like yeah, it's definitely got like this cult aspect to it. And when like each character is just acting a bit strangely, and things start getting more layers get pulled back and start to reveal things. And man, by that ending, when the final scene hits, like your jaw just kind of hits the floor. You're just like, oh shit. It was freaking amazing. Like 10 out of 10 for me. I love this movie.
Yeah, see, I started watching it some time ago and I just couldn't get into it.
Yeah, I
And it's not a bad film. Like I would never be like, "Oh, it's a bad film." No, it's well acted and stuff. I just found it the pacing was just not there for me. Doesn't mean,
right.
I couldn't try to watch it at another time. It just could be when it was in my jam, but it just wasn't connecting with me.
Yeah, I get that because yeah, it is like one of those very slow films, especially in that beginning first act.
Yeah.
And if you're not hooked in by then yeah, you may not like the rest of the movie. And I'll be out to be honest.
And I think it's important to acknowledge that that doesn't mean it's a bad film.
No,
You
nope, that's
know,
just it just might not be your type of film.
and I feel like that's so important
Yeah,
to really draw that line is just because I didn't like it doesn't mean it sucks. It just means that it wasn't my jam.
right.
Because to say a movie sucks completely, like if I look back to The Turning and how we described it, the jump scares weren't landing. The plot really didn't make a lot of sense. And it was a drag to sit through. I wouldn't say The Invitation's plot didn't make sense. I
No,
wouldn't say the acting was bad. I wouldn't say any of those things. I just wasn't connecting with the story. That's
yeah,
the
exactly.
difference.
And that makes a lot of sense because yeah, certain films just connect with other people.
Right?
But yeah, that's the last one I will bring up. So I guess we can kind of jump into our what we've been listening to segment.
Excellent.
And I'll go first with this one. I'm going to talk about a podcast called Talk Without Rhythm. It is a solo cast, kind of like Horror Corridor and the Nightclub. And it is your host is El Goro, and I'm going to read his little synopsis that he has for his website. It says, "Join El Goro, part-time luchador and full-time cinephile, as he delves into the broad, grassy spades and massed granite farms of cinema. Each episode, El Goro discusses two movies tied together by some kind of theme: action, sci-fi, horror, highbrow, lowbrow. It's all fair game."
Sounds
And
like fun.
oh, he is such an amazing host for a show. Like he's just got this like deep deep voice, and he knows his shit. Like he really knows his films and is freaking smart. He has like yeah, it's like all genres of films, but like the way he does it is very unique, very fun listen. And like we've talked about before with the Nightclub, solo casting is not easy.
No.
And yeah, he does it freaking real wonderfully. The show is pretty much available everywhere that you can find podcasts. I think even on Spotify, Stitcher, Spreaker, like any of the podcast apps, Podbean might be on there as well. But yeah, he's been around for quite a while, couple years or so, and like I think is over a couple hundred episodes at this point. And one thing I do love is around Halloween, he will do 31 days where every single day he will release an episode for his show. And it is a 15 to 20-minute review on some new horror film that he has not watched yet. And he'll do it
Awesome.
all 31 days. So every single day you'll have something to listen to on his show during Halloween.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's really impressive. I highly recommend Talk Without Rhythm.
That's awesome. 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 So the one that I'm going to talk about is one of our podcasting brothers in arms. Android Vision has restarted his podcast. So he has a podcast with another gentleman named Sander, and it's called the Cemetery Gates Podcast. And so I guess they were doing their podcast pretty regularly, and then about a year ago, life changed and they weren't able to. So they're back in the saddle again. And the most recent episode is The Phantom of the Mall, Eric's Revenge. And they also did The Borrower. And for those that have followed Android Vision or watched his little YouTube watch show that he does, as well as he's on It's Not Horror Okay with Scott and I, as well as Nudie and Venom, he tends to like really interesting films.
He definitely does. He has a unique taste.
He has a very unique taste. And him and Sander are great together. You can tell that they're friends and that they've known each other a long time. The podcast is under an hour long, which is very palatable, easy to listen to. And they usually start off with talking about news, what they've been watching. And Android is always watching new and different things. So like he'll talk about stuff and you'll be like, what on earth is he talking about? And you'll have to Google it to see what he's talking about. But they did the Revenge of the Phantom of the Mall or whatever it was. I thought that was really funny. I never even heard of this movie. Apparently I'm the one, Phantom of the Mall, Eric's Revenge. Apparently I'm the one out of date here because other people have heard or seen this movie, and they do a great job of comparing it, breaking it down scene by scene, talking about what they liked in the movie, what they didn't like. And they're just fun dudes, right? They joke around and they have a good time. So he is available right now on SoundCloud as well as YouTube. And he's going to be looking to get it onto Spotify and Stitcher and all those other good stuff. So we'll include a link to his new podcast as well.
Yep, and yeah, I definitely want to give it a listen because I really enjoy Android, and I can only imagine like the show is probably very informative and fun.
It is. He's a fun dude. And what I really like about Android is that he marches to the beat of his own drum. He doesn't do I enjoy listening to movie reviews, but one of the biggest reasons why I did not want to do movie reviews moving forward on Friday Nightmares is because everybody does them.
Yeah.
And people do them really well. Like you can listen to Cut to the Chase, Kill the Cast, the WotC Party, Exploding Heads, 22 Shots. They all do movie reviews and they do them so well. And that's awesome. And I felt like for us just doing movie reviews, we'd just be riding on other people's coattails.
Yeah.
I want to do something different because those guys are killing it when it comes to reviews. Like Dan and Lacey right now are going through the entire Leprechaun franchise and having guests on for different versions, like different sequels or whatever of the Leprechaun movie. And that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool. And what I like about Android is he's not going to do Leprechaun. He's going to do some rip-off version of Leprechaun that you've never even heard of.
Like Rumpelstiltskin or something like that.
Yeah, and he's going to talk about it, and he's going to provide that different perspective. So I think that's really cool, and that's why I really want to promote his podcast, besides the fact that he's also a good friend. But he's a very fun dude, and if you're looking for something that you've never heard of before, he's your guy.
Nice. Yeah, I can't wait to listen. I'll probably have that on over the weekend since I really don't got much else to do except for listen to podcasts and watch movies.
Right? Like that's kind of our lives right now, but
Yep.
It is what it is.
And that's why I'm glad that there's all these podcasts, and that's why I'm glad we have this segment to introduce these shows that people may not have heard of to others.
Absolutely. And we still name drop a bunch of the other popular podcasts as well too.
Yeah.
Because people should know about them. They're great. There's anyone that does a podcast puts work and time and energy into it, and they should be acknowledged for their craft and what they bring. I think what we try to do is what we've been listening to is just talk about ones that maybe other people haven't heard of, and just trying to give people who I don't know how to say are underdogs, so I don't think they're underdogs at all. Say You Love Satan is not an underdog by
No.
any stance of the imagination. But it's just to kind of just share information about what else is out there, because we do have a lot of time on our hands and we all love horror movies, and there's nothing better than listening to our brothers and sisters talk about horror
Exactly.
films, right?
I guess we can jump into our main topic now. Now the topic for this episode is aliens and government experiments. We are still kind of just diving into creature features because, like we said before, this just continues and continues and continues because there's so much to cover, and we probably have at least one or two more episodes after this that we'll be able to cover some other parts of the creature feature genre.
Yeah, we just keep going and
Yeah.
going and going into this into this topic. So, I guess it's convenient that COVID's around right now because we have the time to keep going and going into this topic. But aliens and government experiments are always so interesting because you have Area 51 and you have all that, the conspiracy theories that come with it. Are you a conspiracy theorist believer, Scott?
Nope. I do love reading about conspiracy theories just because I love to hear like these crazy out there ideas or even ones that gone, wow, yeah, those I could see why people would think that. I do find them absolutely fascinating.
That's awesome. I personally am not a, a big person into conspiracy theories. But that being said, I do think that maybe there's stuff that we don't know about that obviously exists, that obviously
Yeah.
our governments of all levels are keeping from the general public. Like we see how people react when there's a virus. We go out and we're buy toilet paper and dried pastas. So like I can't imagine how people would react if they even thought alien. So when we say alien too, I hate that we always go to this like, creature with a bald head and beady little eyes. Like I always
Yeah.
find that annoying. And there's lots of movies that break that stereotype. But when we think about quote unquote, life outside of our planet that we're aware of, it's always very scary usually, with the exception of movies like E.T. and stuff that we'll get into.
I don't know. AT, that one still traumatized me as a kid.
E.T. It traumatized me how boring it was. Like, have you tried watching E.T. as an adult? Oh my god,
No.
it
No,
like
I have no interest.
breaks. I went on that ride at Universal Studios. Like it's so like you sit on a bike like literally, and you like had ET in your front little like bicycle thing, and it takes you through the forest and stuff. It's cute. Like don't get me wrong, it's cute, but like anyway, I feel like ET was a movie that like was big because of the special effects and stuff, and you liked it as a kid because it was cute. But then you like go back and watch it as an adult, and you're like, oh my god, what is this? Right? Like
Yeah.
there's just some movies like Homeward Bound was one of those for me too. Like I remember loving that movie, and then I went back and watched it, and I was like, oh my god, this is dreadful. How am I gonna get through this? But taste and stuff change. But anyway. So why aliens, and why should we be concerned about them coming to Earth, right? So Stephen Hawking has repeatedly spoken out about aliens, and in an article that was written by Clara Moskowitz for the Christian Scientist Monitor, and it was published in April 2010. She quoted Stephen Hawking, and he talked about that an advanced spacefaring extraterrestrial civilization would end up wandering the universe in enormous spaceships on the prowl for vital materials after consuming the natural resources of their own world, which is hilarious because that sounds like humans.
It sure does.
Right? Hawkins explained in an episode of the show Into the Universe with Stephen Hawking, which premiered on Sunday on Discovery Channel. So this is obviously going back to 2010. Such advanced aliens would perhaps become nomads looking to conquer and colonize whatever planet they could reach. And we have to question, aren't we doing the same thing with going to Mars and going out to try to find places where humans could inhabit, and these trips to the moon and stuff like that, right? So like, at what point are we not fantasizing about doing the same thing? If you look at Star Wars or Star Trek, I guess more Star Trek is a better example of living in these spaceships and traveling around the world and space stations and stuff like that people could live at. If so, it makes sense for them to exploit each new planet for material to build more spaceships so they can move on. Who knows what the limits could be? So it's a very interesting statement that he made here, because he basically compared aliens to having equal or more intelligence than humans, which, as we know from our previous creature feature episodes, humans are very egocentric.
Yes, they are.
And we like to believe that we are the absolutely most intelligent possible, you know, human or sources of life that could exist. And this argument continued more. So in 2011, um, Michael, I didn't write his, oh, George Michael wrote this article about extraterrestrial aliens, skeptics. And he looked at, furtherly examining what Stephen Hopkins had to say. So the continuous warning of, the colonization attempts. So almost going back in time and looking at the colonization between European settlers and Native Americans. So almost reversing that role of what we did. I say we because I'm white and I am from Wales. And my people came here and colonized. So for anyone that's not considered indigenous or Aboriginal in states, we're colonizers. It's just how it is. The role is now changing with the idea that aliens could be coming to our Earth to do the same thing. And he talks about Battlefield Earth, which I have actually never seen this movie. Have you seen Battlefield Earth?
Nope.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. I think this is the one with John Travolta in it.
Yes. So it talked about how it depicted a hostile and alien invasion of Earth, and the purpose of the offense is to eradicate the human population so that aliens can harvest our planet's resources. So just a few months before in the film, Skyline aliens used massive force fields to vacuum humans into their craft, whereupon the space invaders removed their victims' brains. So talk about the most biggest concern that human beings can have is losing our intelligence to another species.
Yeah.
So not to get too historical here, but if we look at how we basically, as colonizers came to America and Canada and rid the Aboriginal populations or Indigenous people of their cultures. In Canada, we had something called residential schools where we put people that were Aboriginal or Indigenous in these schools to try to rid them of their culture and make them Christian.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, Canada ain't all sunshines and rainbows either. But that's what we did when we came here. We took their land. We tried to build partnerships with them. And I know people don't like to talk about that part of history, but it happened.
Right.
So it's interesting now that we are concerned, when I say we, I mean the current population of North America, of that coming and happening to us. So, of course, film represents society. So there was a little film that came out in 1953. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's called War of the Worlds.
Nope, I've never heard of this.
Never heard of War of the Worlds? So War of the Worlds came out in 1953, and the film is a loose adaptation of the novel by the same name by H.G. Wells, and the first of 5 film adaptations. It's the modern retelling of the 1879 novel, changing the setting from Victoria area, England, to 1953 Southern California. The Earth is suddenly and unexpectedly invaded by Martians, and the American scientist Clayton Forrester searches for any weakness that can help stop them. So which War of the Worlds are you most familiar with?
I am more familiar with the newer one. I've seen them all, but I also know about the radio play that caused a lot of panic when it played because everyone thought it was real.
Absolutely. So I have that album. I shouldn't say I have it. My parents do. And as a young Heather, I would listen to it. And it's a musical based, right? So there's a song in there that one of the lyrics is, the chances of anything coming from Mars were 1,000,000 to 1, but still they come.
Oh, wow.
And it's a very, very depressing story. Basically, Earth as we know it being obliterated and our resources being harvested and people dying and the idea that we have to go underground to rebuild. Sound familiar? The Underground Railroad.
Mm-hmm.
And now this was prior. Well, I guess actually this would have been around the time of the Underground Railroad when this was written in 1897. But the whole concept of the invaders coming and we're trying to fight back and there's nothing we can do. So I know that Tom Cruise had the remade movie, And that was fine. Like, it's not a bad film. But if you actually go back and if you want to listen to the original musical that was aired, or watch the original movie, or read the book, what defeats them is bacteria, which I do believe defeated them as well, the aliens, in the Tom Cruise remake.
Yep.
Right? And what an interesting concept, that our guns, our bombs, nothing could defeat them. But bacteria that we had become immune to, that they were not immune to, had destroyed them. And that's the same thing as when you travel, you get certain vaccinations. So if you're going to India, for example, living in Canada or the United States, you're going to get certain vaccinations to go there.
Yeah.
Because there are diseases and stuff that you are not accustomed to here living in North America.
Yeah, and I think it's also the same thing with like drinking the water in certain
Yep.
places too.
Absolutely. So if you go to Mexico, for example, you can't drink the water. I was in Dominican Republic last year, and they make it very clear that you cannot drink the tap water because your system can't handle it. So it's a very basic concept, but it is playing off that it was the bacteria that did it, not the humans, but we were still superior because we were able to fight off that bacteria from our home planet, right? So, and this followed up to a bunch of other movies, okay? So we begin to see in the 1950s all this invasion type films. So in 1954, we have something called The Target World. And it is a independently made American black and white science fiction film. And it's set in deserted Chicago. And the film storyline focuses on a small group of people overlooked during a massive evacuation of the city that never sleeps, carried out because of the sudden invasion of hostile robot beings believing to be from the planet Venus. So while attempting to defend the city, a military force sets up a command post. Air Force bombers are easily destroyed by the robots. Of course, right?
Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise. A group of scientists, including chief researchers, are finally able to work on capturing a robot to find out if the alien machines have any vulnerability. So still, the humans are able to outsmart the robot. So even though we're getting our ass kicked, we eventually find a way that we're going to capture them and figure out what's going on.
Yep.
So eventually they figure out how to destroy the robots, and they are able to halt the invasion. So this just came out of after 1953's War of the Worlds. So we're definitely seeing a trend that's going on here. And if we go back to our other creature features, it's humans becoming victims. And in this case, it's the victim of the alien. We still see this in modern day society. Anything that is different from us is considered alien. So a lot of people use illegal immigrants the same, like you've heard the term aliens.
Yep.
Right? So it's still a very similar terminology that's being used. So the final 1956 movie that I'm going to use as an example is a Japanese film.
Oh, nice.
And it's called Warning from Space, because I think sometimes we get so caught up in like our little North American bubble that we don't think about the fact that other cultures also had this fear.
Right.
So it was the first Japanese science fiction film to be produced in color. And in the film's plot, starfish-like aliens disguised as humans traveled to Earth to warn of the intimate collision of the rogue planet and Earth. As the planet accelerates towards Earth, a nuclear device is created at the last minute to destroy the approaching world. So what's different about that film?
I'm not sure.
So star-like aliens disguised as humans to warn of the imminent collision of a rogue planet.
Yes, so yeah, the aliens are actually coming to help.
Right? And save the species, and save the human race. We have examples of American films where they're coming and they kick ass, or in English films too. So War of the Worlds, originally that concept was written in England, right? It's at Victorian times. And we eventually find a way to beat them, but not really in War of the Worlds. Bacteria does, but we're immune, so we're superior.
Yep, we gotta take it. We gotta take the credit for it.
Right. Well, I don't know if we take the credit for it, but the point is that we are superior.
Superior.
Thank you. I'm like saying Suspiria. Then the aliens that have come to our planet. So I think that is the important thing to look at with the egocentric piece of it. If we look at the Japanese version of it, it's the idea of this commonality, right? So this alien race is coming to help us so we don't end up dying. Now, it could be because they want to harvest our planet in the future or whatever the case may be. But it's very interesting that that's the road that we took. And during the 50s and the 60s, a lot of these films focused on small towns because it was seen as believable. So in Melvin Matthews' book, Hostile Aliens, Hollywood and Today, which has multiple chapters talking about alien invasions, why we're so fascinated in them, and how it affects cinema, he discussed that it was so important to choose these small towns or these believable characters for these invasion films because you cared more. You got invested in it more. You were more concerned about what would happen. And this led to films such as Village of the Dam. Now, have you seen the 1960 version of Village of the Dam?
I have not. I've only seen John Carpenter's remake.
And what did you think about it?
I thought it was a very interesting concept. Like the remake's okay, like in general, but yeah, I really found the story intriguing, and just like the way that pretty much we are being invaded without actually being invaded, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, and it ties on that hometown appeal. It can happen anywhere,
Yeah.
right? So Village of the Dam, the inhabitants of a British village in Midwich suddenly fall unconscious as does anyone entering the village. The military establishes a corridor around Midwich and sends in a man in a gas mask. He too falls unconscious and passed out. So once they are able to go and investigate, they find out that all the women are pregnant. Anyone that is capable of having a baby 2 months later, they find out are pregnant. So after everyone is woken up after the series of unconsciousness, they are knocked up. And of course, there's issues of infidelity and extramarital affair accusations. And when these children are born, they begin to exhibit powers to read minds and to force people to do things against their will. There have been a number of villagers' deaths since the children were born, and many of them are considered unusual. Some of the citizens start to believe that the children are responsible. And this is confirmed when the children are seen as killing a man by making him crash his car into the Cold War, and again when they force his suspected brother to shoot himself. Now, this is during the time of the Cold War and the fear of Russian spies and how anyone could look like you but could be a traitor.
Mm-hmm.
It could be an internal threat, right? So you're focusing on a small town. You're using children. Who is more trusting than children?
Yeah.
Right? We see children as innocent, as people that shouldn't be feared. So it's a really interesting development that we have during this time of these films, right? So the idea of the fear of the other, of being controlled by other things, it's very, very fascinating. Do you have any fear of that? Do you think that aliens could come and invade us through mind control or whatever it may be, and we would not know? Do you think that's a thing?
I don't know. I believe in aliens, like that there is life outside of just our world, because there's billions upon billions of planets out in that galaxy. But yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know if there'd be anything that would come and like mind control or anything like that.
Okay. I don't know where I stand honestly on the issue. I think that I think obviously it's extremely egocentric to think that there is nothing out there that is smarter than us.
Yeah.
Do I think it would be like Village of the Dam? I don't know. I also never thought that we would be in the situation that we are today in 2020
Right.
with COVID. So like I think it's interesting that we're covering this right now because COVID technically is the alien that's come and invaded, and we're trying to fight against it.
Yeah.
And it's affecting everything from our economy to how we leave the house, who we communicate with. Like it's a very interesting
And how
time,
we interact with people now.
how we interact with people, how we see the world, and how many times I've heard like new reality, things will never be the same again. Like there's a lot of grief that is going on right now about what we're experiencing. And in these films, there's almost an innocent loss with these extraterrestrials coming and changing our world. And in very few cases for the better. In many cases, attacking us, taking away our power, and us as humans having to come back and fight back for what we need. So I think it's just a very interesting play. So
Yeah.
In Melvin's book, Hostile Aliens, Hollywood in Today's News, the 1950 science fiction films, and 9/11. So he talks all the way up to September 11th, which is very fascinating. We'll include the link to this, and I would definitely recommend for anybody who's interested in aliens, conspiracies, and how all this stuff comes together in films. You probably would love reading it. He does talk about John Carpenter. Now, I know John Carpenter is your boy.
Oh yeah, my all-time favorite director.
And John Carpenter in this book discusses the impact the movie The Thing from Another World had on the development of his movie The Thing. He really credits the 50s with having this belief of aliens outside life, starting with the concerns of flying saucers in the 1950s, and people starting to believe that there could be something out there. So even John Carpenter is saying, I wouldn't have been creating the movies that I created, or The Thing, if it wasn't for people buying into the thought of aliens in the first place. And
Right.
that started in the 50s, right? But what we want to reflect on is the development of the 1982 The Thing. So that John Carpenter talked about the novel Who Goes There by John W. Campbell that was written in 1938. Have you heard of this novel?
Yep.
Okay. Do you know more about it than I do?
Not really. I remember listening to a podcast that someone read it, but I can't remember much on it now.
Okay. So this was the direct influence, and he tells a story of a group of American researchers in Antarctica who encounter the Thing, a parasitic extraterrestrial life form that assimilates and then intimidates other organisms, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is a really interesting concept. And we have this birth with the Thing of really good special effects.
Yes, the probably still to this day some of the best special effects that have ever been created.
Made it good for you? Looking back at when you watched The Thing, what made it good for you?
Like the movie itself? What made it good?
Yeah, the special effects. Like, how did the alien scare you? Like, how did that whole concept scare you?
I would say it's mainly because, well, for one, the special effects, they show you an alien creature that is undefinable to describe it, because it turns into so many different things, and what you are seeing is completely unnatural of anything you would ever see in real life. And
the fact that it can assimilate,
yep,
so you
that's
don't
where I
know
was.
what's real and what's fake, right?
Yep, and that's where I was going to say next. That dives into the paranoia part of who you can trust, because you don't know who is the alien now.
Which is so representative of our society now.
Yeah, very much so.
Right? If we look at terrorism, it's who is a terrorist, who is not. And we tend to categorize terrorism by culture and skin tone.
Mm-hmm.
But we have lots of people from all different acts of life that commit acts of terror. Now we might typically they tend to be one certain type that isn't the most popular that people like to talk about when we look at shootings in the United States.
That is very true.
But that aside, we don't know who it could be. And the same with COVID right now. We don't know who has COVID, who doesn't have COVID. There's this talk that you could be a carrier of COVID and not even know that you have COVID. And that's why you have to social distance. It's very, very interesting how this ties into now. That whole concept of not knowing and this entity having so much control because you're losing control.
Yeah. And there was even a line in The Thing that, describes it perfectly and describes what's happening now perfectly. And it's Kurt Russell saying, all of us are just very tired and we don't know who to trust anymore.
Yeah, I think that's really, really valid. And it's interesting that this was written, or not written, that this was done as a film in 1982, right? I just think that's a really interesting development. And even though that film didn't do very well when it came out in the box office, comparably to what they thought it was going to do, and they talked about how E.T. came out at that time and how, E.T. was a very family-friendly film and that could have something to do with it. I think The Thing has just grown in popularity.
Yeah, it went from a cult following to pretty much, if you're a fan of the horror genre, you enjoy this film or respect this film. Everyone knows about it.
And this, Aliens, I'm going to talk about Aliens next, which was in 1979 science horror fiction film directed by Ridley Scott. But that almost does well, even though it's prior to The Thing. It brought Aliens into the real limelight. Yeah. The special effects that were in that were just incredible. and the story of trying to outsmart this deadly and aggressive alien that is loose on their ship. And it's a really, really, it's so well done that we had so many sequels
Mm-hmm.
and then video games and then crossovers with the Alien and Predator franchise. And my understanding, have been pretty well received in the box office. I didn't look up the numbers for all of them, but obviously they wouldn't be making them if they weren't making some money.
Exactly. And yeah, one thing about the Alien, it brought or it popularized this theory with alien films moving forward, at least with certain ones, but like the sexualization, because the mouth of the xenomorph is basically a very phallic symbol.
Yep, very much so.
And it brought along this fear of something in being inside of you. Basically, almost like it's like a fear of rape, because you're getting forcibly pregnated by the facehuggers. Like, it just brought this fear of just being invaded bodily.
Absolutely. And that losing of control. So if we go back to our previous episodes and talk about the egocentric of human beings, it's that losing control. Now, it was not all doom and gloom for aliens. We did have a push for very happy alien films. Look at the Superman movies.
Yeah.
Right. So I recently saw Brightburn, which is the opposite of Superman, which I liked. I thought that was a really cool look on aliens coming from space and not being a hero. But Superman, with the first one being in 1978 and included 5 other films, and such as Supergirl, Superman is an alien that is a human form that is easy for us to understand and makes it acceptable. And it pushes for the positive alien role model that could be the reason that John Carpenter argued that his movie did not do as well in the box office at the time, comparatively to things like E.T. and stuff like that. This book is really fascinating. I think you would really enjoy reading it.
Yeah, it sounds like I would.
The stuff that they pull in is really, really cool. And yet again, this is based on this writer's opinion and perspective and taking interviews that John Carpenter has said. So there's always, a translation issue that when you read material, you have to take it as what that author is trying to promote and say. Right. But I think that there's some validity to it, absolutely. So, and then this continues on with Star Wars and Star Trek movies. We had the idea of the exploratory stage of aliens. And I remember watching Star Trek The Next Generation and loving that. Now, I know there was Star Trek previously to that. I'm just looking at the fact that during this time, we started to see lots of different types of Star Trek. There was Star Trek Voyager and Deep Space Nine.
Yep.
And, every time you turned around, it was like a new Star Trek series was coming out. And it was almost this idea of learning about different cultures and explorations, which was technically happening in our society at the time. In the 90s, we started to really push this acceptance culture and accepting people that came from different lives and learning about different food and having more of this kind of unity of coming together. So that's why we started to see these unities with these alien films.
Yeah.
Or I shouldn't say films, because there was Star Trek films, but as well as a TV series. Were you a Star Trek or Star Wars fan?
Star Wars, I'm a big fan of. Star Trek was hit or miss for me, though the one you mentioned, Next Generation, is the one that I prefer.
I think it's interesting that they get lumped together because I think they're very different.
Yeah, they are.
Right? Like, I feel like Star Trek was more exploratory of different cultures and people coming together. And I remember them all sitting in the bar and having drinks together. And like, there was a lot of like interspecies or whatever hooking up that would happen. And I feel like Star Wars, there was like good and bad. And it was based upon the battle between them.
Yep, and there was I would almost say there was almost more politics in Star Wars.
Yes, I would agree with that, absolutely. And I'm not an expert on Star Wars or Star Trek by any stance of the imagination. It's just looking at, this was the theme that we were seeing during that time. So this led to the movie Independence Day.
Oh, 96. America the movie.
America the film. So the idea that the world could come together and fight back, putting aside differences with, of course, Americans in the lead.
Of course.
Which, there's nothing wrong with that as much as I tease. The movie is a lot of fun. I like Independence Day. Are you
so do I.
a fan of Independence Day? Yeah?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've seen that one in theater, I think, twice.
Yeah, like it came out in the summer. Did it come out on July 4th?
I think it did.
Did it? Yeah, like that was smart marketing what they did with that movie. Like that, talk about a way to market it well. Um, so it was yet again these aliens show up and they kick Earth's ass. Like it's pretty bad, the destruction and stuff that happens before we figure out how to fight back and take them down as a collective, as a human being collective. And then the world's day is Independence Day. I still remember that speech that July 4th will not be known as Americans' independence, it'll be known as the world independence, and everyone around the world's like, yeah. But it's a feel-good film, right? And we also have other films during that time, like Species, that came out in 1995. So the film plot concerns a motley crew of scientists and government agents who track down Sid, a seductive extraterrestrial human hybrid, before she successfully meets with a human male. Talk about now taking aliens and making them sexual and sexy.
Yep.
Right? So like, it's not like you watched War of the Worlds or The Thing or Aliens and we're like, damn, gotta tap me that alien.
Yeah, I would do that one.
Definitely not the case. It's interesting that we start injecting sex into it.
Yeah.
And that continues with the... Sorry, go ahead.
I was saying, yep, that movie was a favorite of mine when I was a young teen for many reasons.
Well, it's a gorgeous young lady that's in it. And as well as it's a pretty well-written... Like, it's a fast-moving film.
Yeah, and it's actually pretty creepy.
Right? So it's very much that turn of now making aliens sexual and bringing that sexual identity into it. Now, maybe that's for us to control too, right? So the idea of sexual relationships, there could be the idea of control. And maybe that's what we were looking at doing with Species, right? Is that they were trying to control us, but we were trying to control them, and or whatever the case may be. Definitely, you could probably just do a super hyper focus just on Species and what the impact would have. And then followed up to that was the X-Files movie that came out. Did you watch the X-Files?
I did not.
The sexual tension between Mulder and Scully was ridiculous.
That I do remember.
Throughout all the seasons. But even then, there was a lot of, the FBI is hiding stuff from us. The truth is out there. We need to find out what is going on. And there was some sexual stuff integrated in that too. And it almost took like Aliens and made it into like Days of Our Lives.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Right? Almost making it more palatable for the average viewer and making it a little bit more soap opera. And then we also have the movie The Astronaut's Wife that came out in 1999. Did you ever see that film?
I did not.
Okay, so The Astronaut's Wife has Johnny Depp in it and Charlize Theron. And he's an astronaut that goes up to space, and something happens when he's up there. And he comes back and he is not the same.
Oh, okay.
And it's very much an alien invasion film too. Very sexy, very sexual in it. Similar to Species, so this is what we're seeing in the 90s, right? So we're seeing this development of alien films and how things are getting almost more like Days of Our Lives soap opera shows. With that sexual side of it coming in, but we're still able to beat them. In some cases we don't, but they're really hot, so it's okay. It's interesting. And then September 11th happened. And definitely the world was no longer the same.
No.
And it brought back this idea that the destruction by foreign allies on American soils, and this continued through the 2000s. So, I think September 11th was the first time that our generation can remember a major attack. So our countries have had attacks before. We burnt down the White House. You guys attacked York. Like, we've had battles, but those were in the 1800s, not current day.
Right.
So September 11th was massive, on a massive scale, and it affected both of our countries very much in the world. So this idea that you were not safe on American soil, that anything could happen in real life. And then we start to see invasion movies making a comeback, but making a comeback on steroids. So we have The Invasion of 2007, which is a retelling of the Body Snatchers storyline, science fiction horror film. that starred Nicole Kidman and Daniel Craig. And the plot follows Washington, D.C. psychiatrist Kidman, who finds that those around her are turning into emotionless beings shortly after a major spaceship crash. Have you seen this movie, or have you seen Body Snatchers?
I actually have seen. I've seen the remake of the Invasion of the Body Snatchers from the '70s with Donald Sutherland, and then I think it was just called. It was Abel Ferreira's Body Snatchers. I want to call it. I can't remember, but it was a '90s remake of it.
And what did you think of Body Snatchers? Like, what did you think of that concept?
I found it actually pretty terrifying.
Oh, yeah?
Because I mean, once again, you don't know who to trust anymore because now your next door neighbor could be one of these aliens, and you're not sure of anything anymore at that point.
And it's fitting that that came back after September 11th, right?
Yeah.
Right? Who do you trust? Who is the terrorist? Who is going to do you harm?
Yep. Exactly.
Right? So it's a very interesting of film reflecting society.
Yeah, sure is.
And then if we look at Cloverfield in 2008, you were the one that talked to me about Cloverfield, and
Yeah.
I think you've seen the second one that you liked more.
Yep. 10 Cloverfield Lane.
And what did you like about the second one more than the original Cloverfield?
I just like the character interactions, their chemistry together, because it's pretty much more like an isolated film. They're all stuck in a bunker. They have to live with each other, and there's only 3 people, and it almost isn't even an alien film until like the very final act. And yeah, it's just more about like just the humans dealing with these humans dealing with a natural disaster that had happened, which is pretty much what the effects after Cloverfield.
Interesting, because I haven't seen that one yet. I've only seen Cloverfield, which is found footage, and it follows, New York City residents fleeing a massive monster, the invasion in New York, which I think is really fitting that they did it in New York.
Yeah.
A little gutsy, to be quite honest with you. That shortly after September 11th, it only would have been 7 years. It's not a lot of time.
Right.
And then finally, we have the movie The Darkest Hour, which is a film that talks about people caught in the middle of an alien invasion. And then most recently, we have Bird Box.
Oh, yeah.
Right? That came out in 2018. I'll be okay. American post-apocalyptic thriller that talks about, a woman that's played by Sandra Bullock as she tries to protect herself and her two children, not her children, two children, from supernatural entities that make people who look at them go insane and commit suicide. And we also have The Quiet Place as well that came out that year.
Yep.
Which is also based on the similar concept of aliens invasions and that they move by, or that they sense by sound. So most of the human race has been knocked off, with the exception of a few survivors. So it's interesting with these films because the humans are not in the majority. There's no Independence Day, rah, we did it, we're so amazing.
Right.
No, you didn't do it, and you got to try to somehow survive in this shit.
Yep. This is like this. Once again, this kind of fits with what's going on now. But like, yep, you're in a completely new situation, and well, you just gotta learn to survive and do things in a different way
and adapt.
Yeah.
Right. So in A Quiet Place, a family, one of the children is deaf, and they mainly communicate through sign language. And I think that's a huge example of adapting, because people who are deaf have had to adapt to our society. When I say our society, I mean individuals that have hearing. Yeah. So how ironic is it that when this happened, people had to adapt to those that were deaf and find a different way to communicate to survive in the new world. So I think you made a really great comparison there. And that's where we're sitting at with alien movies now, and alien invasion. So it's interesting, this kind of little roller coaster that we've done with societal events and what's happening, and what role the alien entities have played, whether they are friend, foe, whether we've been able to overcome them, whether they've overcome us, and now we've just existed in their new world. It's very fascinating.
Yeah, it really is. I was saying, like, yeah, that's some very good, a lot of good comparisons too, and like, yeah, it's kind of crazy how they can kind of compare to what we're dealing with now too, in a way.
Right? It's just, and I think that film does a great job of that, especially horror. I feel like horror doesn't shy away from the real nitty-gritty of what we're actually truly afraid of.
Right.
And that I have a lot of respect for that. But I know you're going to go into the other side of not aliens, of what we have to fear within our own political system and stuff like that.
Yep. Once again, mankind messing with things they should not be messing with.
Story of our
'Cause
lives.
yep. And what bigger way to do this than by massive government experiments and like the ideas that some of these movies took from possible things that happened in real life. Um, like I don't have anything on here. I'm gonna stop here for a second, but I'm gonna talk about Area 51 like briefly because I didn't get any notes on that stuff, but I'm gonna
Okay,
put that
whatever
in
you want to
before I
talk
do.
about. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the first thing I'm gonna bring up is obviously Area 51. There's been a lot of tons of different conspiracies about that place. It's mainly was used for what would you call that? Like secretive training of on weapons
Yeah.
and U.S. like different types of flights, and of course that like since it is so top secret and highly guarded, that of course it brought on the paranoia of what are they hiding there,
Mm-hmm.
and lots of theories have come around that in Roswell, New Mexico, there was a UFO crashing, and that the U.S. government grabbed that and took it to Area 51 and is now learning how to deal with stuff like that and learning the technology and trying to learn how to use that technology and create new weapons from that technology. There's tons of conspiracy theories about that, but there was one movie I did not watch it, but like it definitely ties into this because it's Area 51, where it's a found footage style film where people end up going into Area 51, like somehow break into it and just get kind of chased by an alien that was locked up there. And but then also another one that I can tie into this would be 1988's The Blob remake,
Yeah.
because a lot of wasn't technically Area 51 that this came from, but it just kind of ties in with the whole Area 51 experimenting with new technology for bioweapons and other types of weapons. And well, the Blob was supposed to be a new weapon that was, I believe, on a satellite in space and was supposed to be used as a weapon to be dropped down into whatever place they needed it to be used at, and then this giant oozing gelatinous thing just kind of comes from this and just keeps eating and eating and eating and getting larger and larger and larger as it continues to feast.
Feels like me during quarantine. Just kidding. Just kidding. Sorry.
Wow.
I'm just kidding.
But yeah, that one I felt was like a good one to tie into that. But one of the on my research, I was looking up a lot, trying to find some good stuff, and one of the articles I ended up coming across is called "One of the Most Shocking CIA Programs of All Time: Project MK Ultra," and I will give a link to this article when I do my show notes and everything like that. But one interesting program from 1953 to 1964, when the Central Intelligence Agency conducted dozens of experiments on the effects of biological and chemical agents on American citizens without their knowledge, and the project was called Project MK Ultra. Now, these covert tests included subjecting the unwitting subjects to hallucinogenic drugs and other chemicals, among other things. It is difficult to find official documents about this program. However, in 1976 and 1977, the U.S. Senate conducted investigations and even held a joint committee hearing on the Project MK Ultra, then published much of what was discovered. MK Ultra's purpose, according to the hearing report, the project was intended to develop a capability in the covert use of biological and chemical materials. The motivation was also defensive in that many were afraid during the Cold War that the Russians and Chinese had already developed weapons in this area. As the project proponents noted, the development of a comprehensive capability in this field of covert chemical and biological warfare gives us a thorough knowledge of the enemy's theoretical potential. thus enabling us to defend ourselves against a foe who might not be as restrained in the use of these techniques as we are. So pretty much what I am going to do here is I'm just going to read off the research I found for all these different governmental experiments and then tie them into the movies. So with MK Ultra, one of the movies that was brought up was the Banshee chapter from 2013. Banshee chapter is about an investigative journalist, Anna, who looks into the disappearance of her friend who she believes ingested a secret government chemical, hence MK Ultra's experiments. Her search leads her into the disturbing world of covert operatives with one strange radio transmission troubling her. She begins to realize that the chemical works as a radio antenna of sorts and that allows otherworldly entities to broadcast signals to the people on the drug as well as take over their bodies. So, once again, mankind messing around with things, experimenting, and somehow accidentally letting otherworldly entities in and controlling us, and us losing complete control of ourselves.
Which is the biggest egotistic thing yet again that humans are most afraid of.
Yep. Yeah, after the story continues that they also realize that the government never came up with the chemical, but instead received instructions from the otherworldly entities and made the drug without realizing the full implication of their actions. So, yeah, once again, mankind hearing about something and messing with something that they should not be messing with, that they don't have any understanding of.
I also think it talks to the lack of faith in government.
It really does.
And this would have been in the 50s and 60s, right?
Yeah, well, the project was, yes. Project
Right.
MK Ultra was.
Yeah. So I think that's really interesting if we look at the political situation at that time
Oh, yeah.
and how people would have felt about their government. Nixon.
Right.
And among other things, I think that that's very, very interesting and speaks very much yet again to what's happening in culture.
Oh, it most definitely does. And yeah, it is still, a fear that we have now of trusting our own governments because, once again, tying it to what's going on here, obviously this will be more representative of here in the U.S. We can't trust a lot of what's being said to us right now.
Yeah, I've never seen so much doubt over whether cases for COVID are real or not.
Yeah.
It's not even something I think about as a Canadian. I'm not government's lying to me. There's not that really many COVID cases. But people do believe it. It's very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, and this whole COVID thing brought up another conspiracy theory too of the 5G cell phone towers being the cause of COVID-19 and people burning down these 5G cell phone towers, which is just a dumb idea because with us being in quarantine, if you destroy these towers, well, there goes your fun of being on the internet.
Well, and I think it speaks to the lack of control.
Yeah.
We are in a situation right now where control has been really, really ripped from us. And I think if you look at the development of the United States and you look at your independence and your war against Britain to develop your independence, Canada became independent because Britain was like, you know what, we really don't want to deal with you anymore. And we were like, we don't want to deal with you either. And that's how that went down. It was a lot of treaties and, paperwork and tea talks and stuff like that. America was birthed from, bombs bursting in air. There's a reason why that's your national anthem. So I think when things are restricted in the States, it's very, very difficult because that's just not a mentality that seems to be presented as much as Canada has stayed this kind of British loyalist connection. That's just my perspective. I'm not at all saying that every American feels that way. I just think if you look back in history to the development, there's a reason why the United States have been a leader and very assertive and doing things. And now you're telling a bunch of American people that they can't leave their house. Yeah. That's a huge thing for the government to do. So of course it's going to cause people to be very frustrated and look to reasons why this is occurring.
Yep, exactly. Whether it's correct or not is, but it still doesn't matter. But yeah, another one, this is more like a more well-known experiment that happened, but the Philadelphia experiment. I got most of this information from the Skeptic's Dictionary, and it's written by Robert Todd Carroll. The Philadelphia experiment is an alleged United States Navy experiment done on October 28, 1943. According to legend, the destroyer USS Eldridge was made invisible, dematerialized, and teleported from Philadelphia teleported from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania to Norfolk, Virginia, and back again to the Philadelphia Naval Yard. The experiment allegedly had such terrible side effects, such as making sailors invisible and causing them to go mad. There is also stories of when this ship rematerialized, some of the soldiers and sailors on there were part of the ship, like they were melded with the ship. So kind of a thing like Cronenberg's The Fly, where DNA got melded with a fly. Well, DNA got melded with a ship. And the Navy quit exploring this, but they ended up quitting exploring this technology. The experiment was allegedly done by Dr. Franklin Reno as an application of Einstein's unified field theory. The experiment supposedly demonstrated a successful connection between gravity and electromagnetism, electromagnetic space-time warping. The Navy denies that it ever did such a test. The denial is taken as proof by the conspiratorial mind that the experiment must have really occurred. The less gullible asked, where did this story come from? The facts are that the Navy does all kinds of experiments, many of them secret. Many of these experiments in an attempt to find military applications for the latest discoveries of theories in physics, such as Einstein's unified field theory. It seems to be a fact that the Navy was experimenting with invisibility in 1943, but not with making ships disappear. So it's, once again, a way of creating a defense for ourselves, and once again, not trusting the government with what's being told.
Yeah.
And this Philadelphia experiment definitely had some influences. Like, I think this is what inspired a lot of the whole seeing other dimensions, because obviously, like, kind of jumping different places in time. So one thing I want to bring up is The Mist from 2007, which had its own government conspiracy style experiment called the Arrowhead Project. While not technically based off of a real life experiment, the Arrowhead Project in the film The Mist definitely has influences of the Philadelphia experiment and the Montauk Project, which I'll also get into here in a little bit, where these experiments were done to create wormholes into different dimensions. And so, with The Mist, although it's a monster movie, the central theme explores what ordinary people will be driven to do under extraordinary circumstances. The plot revolves around members of the small town of Bridgeton, Maine, who after a severe thunderstorm causes the power to go out the night before. They meet in the supermarket to pick up their supplies, and while they are struggling to survive, an unnatural mist envelops the town and conceals vicious Lovecraftian monsters as extreme tensions rise among the survivors. Amongst the people in the grocery store are a group of military soldiers, two of which commit suicide, while the other reveals rumors from the local military base about the Arrowhead Project, a government attempt to research other dimensions, and that scientists may have opened a doorway into a dimension containing the creatures invading the town. So, yet, once again, mankind messing with something that they do not understand and releasing it into our world, and all hell breaks loose when we have these unfathomable creatures attacking.
Absolutely. The Mist is a sad movie too. Like, talk about a bummer movie. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, like, I love that movie. Like, absolutely love it. But man, that ending just devastating.
It's funny you should say that, because I refuse to watch it again.
Because of the ending?
Yes.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, so it's not my jam. I can't handle that.
Yeah, and me.
Heather, don't play that. Heather, don't play that.
And it's me. It's because Lovecraftian monsters.
Oh, I know. You love your Lovecraft. That was an ending that I felt like punched me in the gut.
Oh,
I never fully got over it. I'll be honest. I still think about it, and I'm like, like, it's just too much. I can't take it.
And they did the director Frank Darabont did something right when Stephen King ends up saying, "Wow, that's a better ending than what's in my book." Wish I would have thought of that.
That's a compliment, right? It's a compliment.
Yeah. But then there's also another movie that can tie into this, because speaking of other dimensions, the movie Stuart Gordon directed, From Beyond, from 1986, which is based off of an H.P. Lovecraft story.
I think this is your favorite Stuart Gordon movie, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I thought so.
But yeah, this is about an obsessive scientist, Dr. Pretorius, who successfully.
Sorry.
Oh, and this movie is just sexual in nature.
Oh yeah.
But he successfully discovers a way to access a parallel universe of pleasure by tapping into the brain's pineal gland. When he is seemingly killed by forces from this other dimension, his assistant, Dr. Crawford Tillinghast, is accused of the murder after psychiatrist Catherine McMichaels and Detective Bubba Brownlee take the case. Yep.
Bubba Brownlee.
The trio risks a return to the other world in order to solve the mystery. So, yep, once again, opening dimensions, messing with things you should not be messing with, and dealing with a creature that is beyond comprehension. Well, I should say creatures, because there's multiple in this. But yeah, and that all I feel has some inspiration from the Philadelphia Experiment. All those two movies, I feel definitely have that influence there. And then there is one more project that I want to talk about, and this one is what I brought up earlier, the Montauk Project. And this one was where Stranger Things truly got inspired. And I found an article called "A Look at Stranger Things and the Secret Government Experiments That Inspired It" from the New York Daily News by Jessica Schilla DeBeck. The strangest thing about Netflix's breakout hit Stranger Things may well be its source material. Before the 80s thriller series received its official title, it operated under the moniker Montauk, which alluded to much more than the show's since changed Long Island location. Some of its creepiest plot points, like Eleven's connection with the monstrous Demogorgon and the portals to the Upside Down, nod to what most conspiracy theorists call the Montauk Project. The alleged series of government experiments which dug into things like telepathy, clairvoyance, and time travel were first made public by Preston Nichols in the early 90s. He claimed in a series of books that he had recovered a slew of repressed memories about his role in the project, and others followed suit, also suggesting that they were a part of the mysterious experiment. Eventually, Nichols connected with Al Bielek, who claims to have been involved in both the Montauk Project and its inspiration, the Philadelphia Experiment, courtesy of a wormhole which sucked him and his brother into the future. The U.S. Navy, amidst World War II, was looking for ways to foil Nazi radars so they could safely transport goods to their European allies. The Philadelphia Experiment sought to turn ships invisible to enemy eyes and was nearly successful in some respects. So, this, once again, Stranger Things is getting influenced by not one, but two different projects that the government had worked on.
Which makes sense for the first season.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Then I feel like they kind of just rode that out. So, yeah.
Yeah, I never did finish season 2, so I don't know much of what exactly happened, but that one, it looked like it was more just like a portal into another dimension type deal.
Yeah, I've seen all 3 seasons.
Yeah, I think there's 3 seasons right now.
Yeah, I've seen all 3. Yeah, I feel like that was a series that started off very strong on that and then just kind of read it out a lot longer than needed.
Oh, absolutely. And it's still going to go because they got a season 4 coming.
Yeah. They make money, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, and according to conspiracy theorists, the experiment didn't make its subject ship, the USS Eldridge, disappear, but rather resulted in its transport to Norfolk, nearly 200 miles away. So something I talked about earlier. But most officials sought to shut down the project after members of the crew reported side effects, which included everything from nausea to participants being physically embedded into the ship. So, yep, what I was talking about, with them kind of just being part of that ship now. The Montauk Project, though, supposedly started out with a focus on mind control. Conspiracy theorists say that children with psychic sensitivity were both sought out and kidnapped, not unlike 11, with the hopes of enhancing their latent abilities, perhaps for use in psychological warfare. The continuation of the experiments allowed these to evolve to manipulate reality beyond the physical realm. Scientists, with the hope of being able to control space and time, began creating wormholes on the base, which scared a lot of those involved with the project. Hence how the Demogorgon became a thing, because it escaped from another wormhole, once again. And then, the psychic ability powers. So, there are all sorts of films that have been based solely off of that Montauk Project, just from reading that. Scanners probably is the Mind's Eye. But that is pretty much the information that I had found on some of these government experiments that have a lot of different theories and some of their inspirations for films. We were going to discuss some of our favorite movies from this type of genre. Did you happen to have any you wanted to mention that we haven't brought up yet?
Nothing that really is going to come up. Like, I really like The Astronaut's Wife, actually. That's one of my favorite alien type movies. I'm not big into like government experiment stuff. Like, I think there's a lot of classics and stuff, but it's not my go-to.
Right.
I did enjoy Stranger Things. I did enjoy the first season, and I enjoyed the third season. The second season was okay. So I did like, probably that's the closest thing to government experiments that I can say that I really liked myself.
Fair enough. But but did you have any that we haven't brought up yet? Like
No, I
one
was
that.
just saying the ones that I do like is what we've
Oh,
talked about,
oh,
right?
gotcha. Okay.
So I was just reiterating the ones that I enjoyed. Like, those are the ones that really speak to me, and that's why I brought them up earlier, right? So
Okay,
those are the
gotcha.
ones that stick with me. I don't know enough about other government experiment ones. I don't. Like, honestly, the ones that we've gone into great depth on are the ones that I'm knowledgeable with. This is an area for me that, because it's science fiction-y, I'm not a huge fan, right?
Right.
Like, I enjoy the Alien movies, I enjoy the Predator movies, I like Independence Day, but I wouldn't dig out the government experiment stuff. I just don't. I even sometimes doubt whether some of these government experiments have happened, and I probably have. I just don't have the interest in that area to dig it out. So the ones that we've talked about are the ones that I enjoy because they're the only ones I'm really interested in pursuing, right? Like, I liked how
Right.
Stranger Things developed, and I like the kids, and I particularly like the sheriff that's in it. Like, and when Winona Ryder freaks out for like every season.
Right.
So there really isn't, my palette isn't big enough. That's why I kind of just reiterated the ones I liked and why, because those are the ones that I enjoy the most.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna bring up one that I think you also enjoyed, if I remember some of our conversations. But Slither.
Yes, I did like Slither. I guess you're right. That is an alien one too. Yeah, that's true. I didn't think of that.
Yeah, and that one kind of goes along the lines of like Alien and the whole like being your body being invaded and once again losing control when these slugs take over your body.
Yeah, and it was really creepy. I remember the bathtub scene and like
Oh,
that other
that
stuff. Like,
scene. Yeah.
it was a really good film. I forgot that those were aliens, and I guess Little Shop of Horrors as well as a musical.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I really do like that as well. See, I have to really think about it because, and unless I kind of engage in a conversation about it, it's not like if you were to ask me slashers or, societal horror or stuff like that, I could easily be like pointed out, but I have to really like concept and think about the alien films that aren't the basic ones that we've spoken about.
Right. Yeah. I have a couple like independent and lower budget ones that I'm gonna bring up that I highly recommend to anybody. But one of them is called The Deadly Spawn, which was like mid to late 80s. Forgive me on the date. I can't remember, but super low budget, shot on video, and it is low budget done correctly. Like they invested their time into these monsters, which were weird slugs with like massive teeth, and kind of like the blob when they ate, they grew bigger and bigger and bigger, and extremely violent, like for especially for such a low budget film. Like you could tell they invested most of their money and time into their prosthetics and their gore. But I highly recommend searching for this movie and checking it out. It is a fun watch, and it's about aliens that pretty much like the blob crash landed and came from a meteorite. Like most of these alien movies tend to happen like that, it seems. But then there's another one that came out mid to I want to say in maybe the last decade or maybe a little bit before that, but it's called Altered, and it is about a group of people that find an alien, like a body of an alien, and
Mm-hmm.
he looks like a miniature version of like the green, bald-headed, big-headed, big black-eyed looking aliens. And they find the body and they drag it back to their barn where for some reason or another they decide they want to try doing an autopsy on it. And well, it's not dead. And it gets angry and very bad things happen. But I highly recommend it. It's a very good, creepy alien movie that was like independently made.
Cool.
But yeah, those are just a couple of the ones I wanted to just bring up and just kind of give a nod to, and like hopefully people will check out because yeah, I recommend both of those films,
I
and
guess
obviously Slither.
The only other one, and I talked about it earlier briefly, was Brightburn.
Yeah,
And I don't really enjoy superhero movies simply because I feel like they're overdone now.
yeah,
Like I can't keep up with the Marvel universe. I give up. Like
yeah,
I couldn't do it anymore. But I did like the angle they took in Brightburn. And I liked how it didn't focus too much on the alien aspect of it. Like I'm okay with aliens if they're, you know, it's an action adventure kind of thing. But if it's too much of like this kind of government testing and like I just feel it too conspiracy for me, and that's me. It's not saying that they're
right.
bad things. I just don't care, and that is hard for me to buy into.
Yeah, I can see that.
Right?
And one that's not technically alien but would work in the government experiment would be and I guess if I remember correctly, was based loosely off of a government experiment a long time ago, but Return of the Living Dead.
Oh, that's true. Right? That's true.
I'll
Good
say it's
point.
it doesn't fit with our creature feature thing because it's more zombie film, but that one did like tie into the whole government experiment and creating that trioxin that brought the dead back to life. But yeah, that is our main topic. I th- we've pretty much covered everything, but yeah, we know there's like a shit ton of alien and government style experiment movies, and we're not gonna be able to cover all of them. But we just pretty much covered the ones that once again fit our theme that we were going with in our topics.
Yeah, and that's usually what we do. We look at our topics and we try to match things to what fits our interest, our own personal interest when it comes to this subject. And for someone who doesn't care for alien movies that much, I was able to find stuff that matched what my interests are and the type of speed that I like to go with films. So especially
Oh
films
yeah,
like this.
yep, absolutely. And like yeah, same with me. Like it was hard to find some specific research on the government experiment stuff, but that's because that's a lot of conspiracy theories and tightly kept secrets. So it's hard
Yeah.
to find real information. But yeah, it was fascinating what I came across. Um, but yeah, I guess we are going to discuss the movies that we are looking forward to
So there's
coming
not
up.
much.
Yeah, right. So we're kind of looking at VOD releases for right now. Yeah, the first one I'll bring up is The Wretched from
Yeah.
IFC Films. Wow, I I just came across this trailer and I was just like, I haven't heard of this one, and I just threw it on, and wow, this looks really freaking creepy.
Yeah, the trailer looks good. I really love the play they're doing with people in their 30s and moving forward with their lives and where they choose to live and stuff like that. I think it's a really cool thing. Jesse Eisenberg's in it.
Oh nope, you're thinking Vivarium.
Oh, sorry, wrong one. The Wretch was the other one. My bad. See, this is what happens in quarantine. You lose track of different movies. Um, no, that one's about the child, right? That's going
Yeah,
missing. Yeah. So rewind, disregard everything I said. This one does look interesting as well. It looks, yet again, this looks like a movie that has a twist.
yeah, oh
Like
yeah,
you watch the trailer and you're like, there's a twist. Probably it will be definitely one that I watch. Am I looking forward to it as much as I'm looking forward to the other one that I just started talking about? Clearly not, because that one's on my mind. Um, but yeah, it looks interesting. And for a VOD, it looks pretty. It would be worth the rental fee.
yeah, because this one just had like this really creepy, kind of scary vibe to it. Yeah, like some of the things they showed in this trailer, like they probably spoiled some stuff, but at the same time, like it looks like something that would be interesting that I would be totally into.
Absolutely.
But yes, since you are so
I
excited about
know,
the
since I'm
next
so
one,
excited about it, right?
why don't you bring
Um,
up Vivarium?
well, I kind of already alluded to it, assuming that Scott doesn't cut that out of the, when he edits. First of all, I'm excited to see Jesse Eisenberg back. I have mixed feelings on him. I think he's pretty entertaining at times, but I enjoy that this is looking at people in their 30s and the expectations of where they live and what they do. I don't want to give too much away because I know we do have people that listen to this that don't watch trailers, but I think it's a very modern reflection of society for people in their 30s and expectations of what they should be doing. And I love movies like that. Like that's what I dig. So it looks good to me. I will definitely watch it. Not even a question. I may even watch it tonight. I'm just pretty pumped about it.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you because as soon as I seen this trailer, because I watched it last week and I was like, oh, this is totally something Heather would be into.
Totally, right? Like it has to be written all over it for sure. Like it's
It
definitely
does.
something that would totally be my jam.
Yeah, and I am totally on board for this film because like yeah, pretty much for the themes that you brought up, but also it just looks really bizarre.
Yeah, and it looks well done, right? Both actually all the films we looked at look well done. They look well filmed. They look well acted. From a trailer. Like,
Right.
but they look like they're decent films that are coming to VOD, which is nice to see because we're not going to the theaters anytime soon.
Right.
So
Yay.
it is what it is.
So yeah, we take advantage of this and we watch the movies that we can. And yep,
Yep.
this one seems to be right up our alley. So probably by the next time we record, we will be probably having this in our what we've been watching category.
Yep.
But then yeah, the very last one we'll talk about. This trailer got released this week, kind of out of nowhere. Like I knew they were working on it, but I had no idea they were this close to being finished. But it's Train to Busan presents Peninsula, which is the sequel to Train to Busan, but it takes place 4 years after the events that occur on Train to Busan. And wow, this film looks freaking crazy.
It does look good.
Yeah, it looks full-blown action zombie apocalypse and a lot more characters it looks like too.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it's going to be similar to like 28 Days Later, 28 Weeks Later.
Yeah, it could be.
There. And I like both. Like I like 28 Days Later and I like 28 Weeks Later. I do probably prefer 28 Days Later more. And hopefully that's not the case here because I love Train to Busan. I think it's one of the best zombie movies, infected movies, whatever you want to call it, that have ever been created. I can't say anything negative about that film.
Absolutely not.
And I'm really hoping that this sequel follows up to that. But even with sequels, you got to have yet again sequel expectations. So hopefully the sequel is decent, and hopefully we can see it in the theater by 2022. That'd be awesome.
Yep. I don't know if this will get a theater release or not because I don't even think Train to Busan got a theatrical release.
Yeah, but it's blown up enough in North America where you could. Maybe
oh yeah, definitely could.
Maybe not like small towns, but big cities like Toronto, New York, Detroit, places like that, I think could definitely have this released and probably do okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it probably would. Like it might have like that limited theatrical release type of deal.
Right. Because you can make money. Like America is where you make a lot of money, which is why we really need you guys to
get our asses in gear
recover,
and get this shit taken care of.
Because you really do dictate a lot of the film grossing incomes that films make. So that'd be really awesome if we can have that happening sooner rather than later, but one step at a time.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, because I would like to be able to go do whatever I want again.
Right, be able to leave the house and do more things than just walk around your neighborhood 15 times over.
Exactly.
Looking for alien life or government experiments gone bad. And
let the conspiracy theories run wild in my brain.
Right. It will be really interesting to see how COVID is treated 15, 20 years from now, 10 years from now, when people write papers on it.
Oh, for sure.
And the belief, because I've heard so many different arguments of how it started.
Yep, same here.
And one of them is a government experiment gone bad.
Yep, like a bio warfare weapon.
Yeah, right. And I'm not here to, and we're definitely not here to say what it is or is not, but I just think that's interesting, right? It's a big interest for people is stuff that we can't understand and something that's so invasive like COVID. So yeah, it's interesting that we did this episode. I think out of all our episodes so far, this one ties more into the unknown and the alien factor. So yeah.
Yeah, and little did we know that it or at least when I was doing the research, little did I know how tangentially tied it would be to what's going on today.
Yeah, I feel like we just figured that out as we talked.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy.
Scott and I made it look like we knew what we were talking about, but we kind of just bullshitted along and then made it really sound good. So thank you for listening and agreeing with, of course, everything that we say, I'm sure. But yeah.
But yeah, so thank you all for listening to us. I forgot to do this on the last episode, but find us we're under the Kill the Cast banner. You can find us on Spotify or Legion Podcast Network or even Podbean. If you subscribe to Kill the Cast, you will see our episodes pop up in their feed. We also have a Facebook group for the Friday Nightmares podcast. Just search it up and ask to join, and we'll let you in. Got a lot of interesting topics that get brought up in there. We got a lot of news articles and things like that get shared. So it's a great community of people, and yep, want to continue seeing it grow.
Absolutely.
So yeah, until next time, unpleasant dreams.